The following is a conversation. It has the features of any conversation, such as imperfectly expressed thoughts, ill-considered opinions, and the notions of several sleep-deprived brains. Try not to get your stethoscope in a twist about it.
On today's show, we're talking about John Green's new book, Everything is Tuberculosis. But first, as we approach the end of the M1 year, I know maybe it doesn't quite feel that way on April 18th, but it's coming. I want to know what you do when you're not grinding on MOHD or CAPS or mass. Like, do you guys do things outside of med school?
Sometimes I lie on my floor and stare at the ceiling.
That's I think everybody does that in some way or another.
Yeah.
If you came over to my house of an evening, you would see that I'm not on the floor.
Okay, so then you're not doing it right.
I've graduated to couch.
Okay, that's not good enough.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. You need floor time. You need tummy time.
Yeah.
Not to put it on him, but I assume he's got the back pain too.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Fine.
Not to put it on you.
I mean,
not to call you old.
Sometimes, yeah. Not gonna lie.
I get hurt sitting in my study chair too long.
Oh.
So,
that's what the floor time is for.
Yeah.
It's just straighten
that's
out
to
your
help
spine.
it out. Yeah.
No, I have the world's best couch.
Okay.
Sometimes I even purposely sleep on it. There's just something so comforting about this couch and the way it holds my body of an evening.
Great.
This is
Great.
Thank you for sharing.
I mean, what can I say? It's just delightful. I need a new mattress. So.
I've weirdly taken up rock climbing this semester.
Oh,
Wow,
boo.
really?
Yeah.
over at the rec
Over
center.
at the rec, yeah.
It's a
do
good
you
wall.
do like free bouldering or do you do like with ropes?
So
or-
I got certified to do the ropes about a month ago, so I'm not very good at it yet. But I have done it a couple of times. But then, yeah, also bouldering.
Do you like the wall over at the rec center? It's
I
like
do.
the-
It's nice. They just redid the like bouldering like portion of it too, so there's like actual routes now, which is kind
Oh.
of sick.
How long have you been doing it?
Since like February,
Okay.
like literally
That's
2
good.
months.
That's good.
Good.
Yeah.
huh?
You're gonna have some grip strength, right? You're gonna
Mm-hmm.
have
Working the forearms.
Yeah.
You have like the shoes and everything.
No, they're like $100, and I like.
And we're like poor.
Mhm,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I bought the harness to do the ropes, and I was like, "That's all the money I can spend this
Yeah.
semester on this hobby."
Oh,
Yeah.
Flip flops is. what-
No,
what
obviously
you've
that's the
got
way to
now.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been reading a ton since spring break started. I'm on book 6 of the Dungeon Crawler Carl
Yes,
series.
we
Oh my
talked
God,
about
is
this
that
before.
Yes,
For sure.
And
Do not sleep on Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yeah.
I
it's
bought
good.
the first book, and I haven't read it yet.
It's good. And yeah, I've just been going through it and fully neglecting other things at times to read it. and everything.
Prioritizing you
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah.
Kate?
I've been watching House,
Oh.
which
Blast from the
all
past.
of our professors like multiple times this semester are like, "Don't be like House, don't watch House." But I find it really fun because I like sit there and I watch TV, but then I'm also like, ooh, like
Ooh,
Don't.
medicine.
I love
learned
the
about
advice.
this.
Don't watch House. Don't watch House. It's like don't think about an elephant. You know,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? You're gonna go watch
We're
House.
gonna go watch House.
and I watch it with my boyfriend, and he's not in medicine, and so like every episode he's like, "What's wrong with them?" And I'm like, some obscure thing
Lupus.
that like I'm probably not even gonna know.
Lupus, Guillain-Barré syndrome.
never lupus.
Neoplastic syndrome.
Neoplastic,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
I should watch it again. Like I've fully watched it like probably twice now. I remember a friend of mine and we were at like a new job and didn't have to do anything for about an hour and a half, 2 hours with lunch or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So like we would watch an episode or two while we
Like
ate.
during.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I there was like a like a screenshot of a Tumblr post that was then a Twitter post that went on Instagram, stuff like that. That was like, oh, House is just a retelling of Sherlock Holmes, and that never connected in my mind until I saw that. My mind was completely blown away by that.
Watson and Wilson.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There are no new ideas in TV.
None.
That's
none.
okay.
That's fine.
Hero's Journey and something.
Yeah.
Right.
Meandering in the margins of medicine, it's the Shortcoat Podcast. Weird news,
fresh views,
helpful clues, and interviews.
by students for students.
Subscribe to our weekly show at theshortcoat.com.
Welcome back to the Short Coat Podcast. It's a show that gives you an inside look at medical school from the students drinking from that fire hose. It's a production of the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine. They know about it. I mean, you know. I'm Dave Etler. With me today in the SCP studio, M1's all, and I'm guessing, I'm gonna guess that these. So I thought about your personalities as much as I know them. Obviously, Kate is your first time on the show. I don't know your personality, and I decided to predict what it was that you.
Wow.
Well, decided to predict what that was, and so here we go. I bet she's a trash-talking, massive multiplayer online role-playing gamer. It's M1 Srishti Mather. He probably likes to whittle figures of woodland creatures in his spare time. It's M1 Zach Grissom. She spends her free time doing resin arts and crafts she sees on YouTube. It's M1 Kate Timbo, right?
Timbo, yeah.
Timbo. Should have verified
No arts
that.
and crafts for me.
They're really into trolling Redditors on r/Tesla. It's M1 Tyler Pollock.
It's a great hobby idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Short Coats, if you hear something that causes an emotion of any sort, or if there's something you want to hear about on a future show, visit theshortcoat.com/tell us and give us a piece of your mind. I'd like the show to be better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, and that's one way to help. So, getting to the point of today's show, Zach, we're looking at John Green's new book, Everything is Tuberculosis, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection. And because it came out officially just today, I don't actually have a copy of this book, but you guys did. Did you guys get a
It
copy?
came out in.
It came out ages ago. What are you
It's
talking
been
about?
out.
March.
Did I have the wrong
What are you talking about?
date?
Also, books release
Maybe
on
paperback
Tuesday,
did.
so it's definitely
I
not
don't
going
know.
to release today.
Fuck.
Books come out on Tuesdays?
Yeah, books come out on Tuesday. All books come out on Tuesday. That's the book publishing day.
That's crazy. I
Yeah.
never knew that.
Do you know
Yeah.
the history of why Tuesday
No,
is?
I just know that Tuesday is book publishing day.
I'm not going to look it up.
It's been out for a hot minute, dude.
I
think
don't
it was
have
March
this book,
16th.
is the point.
Ah.
March 16th
Yeah.
was the date. I
Just a
think.
full month off.
Oh, it's April. That's my problem. That's my problem. Look, I do what I can for this show.
Oh yeah.
Part of that,
Is
Part
not
of the
looking anything up.
yeah.
You
I
run
like
on
it to
vibes
be, I like it to be,
here.
yeah, I like it to be vibey. I like to be spontaneous.
Yeah.
Anyway,
For what it's worth, I was doing like a little like virtual career fair thing yesterday, and I had someone come up to me and they were like, "Oh, I'm really looking into Carver because I really like the Short Coat podcast because you guys just say stuff." And I was like, "Yeah."
yeah,
We sure did.
we like just saying stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, but from what I've read about the book, it's an incredibly entertaining, accessible, and humanistic look about the history of TB, the rather unfortunate reasons it's still around, and what that continued existence says about the world and humanity today. Sounds like a really good book.
I read the book in 4 hours. Like I got a copy
Damn,
of it.
girl.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I got a signed copy, which I was very excited
Oh.
about. But yeah, I read it in 4 hours because I physically could not put it down. I've grown up on the Green brothers. Like I
Yeah.
love Hank and John Green.
They're pretty good.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with The Fault in Our Stars. When I was younger.
Weren't we all?
Weren't we all, right? And so just anything he puts out, I completely devoured that book. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are usually reading some pretty, shall we say, uninspiring material.
Not Zach.
Dense.
Dense material. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Dungeon
I'm
crawler
I'm
Carl.
avoiding the
Yeah,
denseness with that action fluff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
But this book sounds like it's a really good read. How does that feel when you like get to drop back into like pleasure reading mode, I guess?
Hey.
From like, I don't know, whatever you're reading in med school. PowerPoint handouts. I don't know.
Yeah, basically.
I don't usually do a whole lot of reading. I read a ton in like undergrad, high school, and then got to med school, and I was like, I physically like can't look at anything any longer. I just want to let my brain rot. But I actually listened to this book on audio.
Okay, yeah.
It was really great, and I was kind of a little nervous because I was like, oh, this is like nonfiction, like it's not going to be something super lighthearted, but like he did such a good job of like telling it in a narrative way that I ended up really loving it. So
Who narrated it? Did John?
he narrated.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
really
It's
awesome.
Incredible.
Yeah, I had before I actually started college, like I went through a couple like 30-hour long books on like emerging diseases and zoonotic diseases and things like that. Hence why I ended up doing a microbiome.
Wow,
degree.
okay.
Anyway,
Nerd.
could not do any of that type of listening, which was still like a storytelling one for a long while, because it just felt like you were never turning off that part of your brain and never able to just kind of take a story in. And there wasn't in those ones like the same sort of emotional piece that John really brought in here. So yeah, I do just want to also give a plug out to the publisher that were very kind enough to send me a free copy of this, because unfortunately Mr. Green was not able to join us. But just a little invitation, if you ever are free, John, would love to have you on here.
John, please.
If you happen to
Please.
listen to this.
Please.
Anyway.
Yeah, come on, Mr. Green.
Come on.
We love you. Okay, well, walk us through it. What are we talking about here? Since I don't know.
Yeah, so he kind of gets this obsession about tuberculosis based on a visit that he had, and goes on to really want to understand why a disease that can be treated persists and why so many people have it. So he kind of delves into when we first recognized it as a disease up until like the modern era, and like what's happening right now with tuberculosis control around the world and stuff.
Tuberculosis is, of course, we've known about tuberculosis for a long time. And I know that he gave a speech at the UN a few years ago.
Sure did.
And I know that he was talking to them about, essentially our failure to eradicate a disease that is very treatable, or at least was before multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And that we've just kind of failed to do it.
He doesn't draw the direct comparison that I remember to like our smallpox eradication, but smallpox eradication was this huge multinational effort to just get enough of that cycle of infection broken long enough that it no longer had its like sole reservoir of humans, which isn't fully possible with tuberculosis because there are other reservoirs, but we haven't taken those efforts. So yeah, what did you all find with that?
No, yeah, I think the best part about the book is he's very much like he knows that there is a problem. He sees what the issue with the problem is, and he's telling us like this is something that is entirely within our control to change. And all it requires is people having an iota more of empathy and giving a shit about someone that isn't themselves for once. And I think this book is a really good wake-up call for that. Like, even I'm in medicine, I'm doing all of the things, and like if someone brings up tuberculosis, like in my mind, the first thing I'm thinking about is like, oh, that's like not a thing anymore. And that's not true. So like even though it seems very narrow and like focused on something, the issue of tuberculosis, if we can solve that is that gives us the methodology to solve so many other things.
Well, in what way?
Like literally, so one of the biggest barriers, obviously, like that he talked about with tuberculosis is an issue of disease, and the importance of treating disease has always been tied to who has the disease. So when the wealthy, the upper class, they had the disease, then we have a push to solve this issue. And so when tuberculosis no longer became a disease of the wealthy, people stopped caring.
And before we could care for it, it was not necessarily even seen as a bad thing,
Right.
too, before they had the idea of how to protect yourself against it.
Yeah.
I think like one big quote, he like repeated it multiple times, was that like the treatment is where the disease is not.
Yeah.
And the disease is where the treatment is not. So just like this idea of like, we have the means to do it. And so like, if we can just bring that treatment with like how connected the world is today, like that's totally, totally possible. Just have some really like systemic barriers in our way to get there.
Well, and I think kind of getting back to your point is that people in the U.S. aren't dying of tuberculosis because we have such like a robust healthcare system, and that there was this quote that I read a couple of times that he asked this TB doctor, like, if everyone in the world had access to the healthcare that I have in the United States, how many people would die of tuberculosis a year? And they were like 0. No people should die of tuberculosis. And like, if we can change this problem and bring tuberculosis like access to people, because that requires an entire like functioning healthcare system, and you need to have a hospital that has overnight electricity to like keep these drugs in their like frozen state or whatever it is. And so it's like, if you can figure out that issue, you're going to not only cure tuberculosis, but then that expands the access for so many other issues that we face.
Yeah. As I recall from his speech, I mean, these are all solvable problems.
Did you go to the speech?
No.
Okay.
I just watched.
Oh, like the one. Okay.
Yeah, because he was here recently.
Right. That would require you knowing
Iowa
when the book
City.
came out.
Right. Shut up. Yeah, as I recall from his, I mean, these are all like solvable. We have solved these problems.
Yeah.
You know, like refrigeration is a thing.
Yeah.
For instance. But, you know, providing electricity overnight is difficult in some situations, especially where people are poor. You mentioned his visit with he started thinking about this topic after a visit. Who was that?
Yeah, he was on I forget the reason that he was on the trip to Sierra Leone, a country in Africa, and he ended up visiting a tuberculosis hospital. He was there for something completely different.
Yeah, something
right?
else.
It was women's health. He was there with his wife, and they were examining like maternal structures in Sierra Leone.
And then he was kind of struck with that visit. Meets a young boy, he believed, called named Henry Ryder, who kind of shows John around the hospital and kind of introduces him to some people and everything. And he finds out like near the end of that first day or that visit that Henry's actually much older and not the same age as John's own son, also named Henry, and his body's been racked by tuberculosis, and that's why he's shorter than you'd expect for the age, skinnier than he should be, and everything, and kind of goes on this deep dive now, like since that 2019 visit on this issue and why it can't be fixed, which I think is really interesting because he's a novelist, right? He's not an epidemiologist. He's not a microbiologist. He's not a physician. He's a storyteller.
And like, even when you look at like John and Hank Green, like at least in my head, it was always Hank's the science one, right? Like it's
John's the humanities one.
John's humanities. John was for A-Push. Hank was for AP Bio. That's how it was in my head.
Yeah. So how did that affect your engagement with this? Do y'all think, with him being a storyteller instead of just giving you facts or the epidemiology of it?
That's been my favorite part of the book so far, is like every chapter or so he's tying it back in to Henry's life and his story and how he's like a poet and a writer, and that back in the like 1800s the poets and the writers were romanticized for having tuberculosis, and just kind of like weaving his story and like the stigma that they face into all of the facts and like figures that he's giving us.
It gives you some context for
absolutely
for what it is you're reading. I mean, I think we've sort of rediscovered in the last few years that facts without context accomplish very little for people. We just don't. We just aren't able to hang our hats on anything when facts are just thrown at people.
Yeah, I think that's one of the strongest parts about this book. And this like genre of book in general of like, as it is, science, numbers, statistics, we have a hard time putting those together, and they often come with this idea of like, oh, I'm not smart enough to understand this. I don't have the background to understand this, so I'm not even going to try. Or we get this sort of narrative like, oh, these are numbers, these are false facts, these are things that are being made up to push an agenda or something like that. And so that's what I think what he does with this book is really powerful, because he puts it back in the human, and he puts it back in the person. And so you don't need to have a degree in epidemiology or a master's degree in microbiology to understand the story of a human. And I think that's one of the greatest things he does.
Yeah. Does it without it becoming pop science either.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't speak beyond his experience or anything either. So
yeah.
I think that's something we could do a lot better job of, like, especially in the didactic years of medical school. Like, I know you see more of the human side when you're out on the wards and, you know, your third and fourth years. But, like, right now, like, even today, we were talking about, like, endometriosis. And, like, the facts that we're getting in class are just, like, you know, the histology preparations and just, like, random clinical symptoms here and there. Like, I know people that have endometriosis and, like, the way that it affects their life. And so, like, that part of the lecture stuck with me because I knew the context behind it. And I do think that if we had more of that like narrative, like this is how it affects the human person, as opposed to just like, here's the signs and symptoms of what, you know, someone comes into the hospital looking like, it might make it easier for medical students as a whole just to like stick that information in the brains, retain it.
I always wonder if you were given sort of, you know, if you were given sort of supplemental information about, say, we're talking about endometriosis right now. If you're given supplemental stories from the patient's perspective, if you would even have time to pay attention to those stories. Because I know there's always this tension between, you know, what you need to learn in medicine versus what would be great if you could had time to learn in medicine.
But the thing is, when you give us those stories, it enhances our learning.
Well, and I know that people love, you know, these sort of patient interactions.
When the patient comes in and they're telling their stories, I remember everything about their case.
Yeah.
I'm not going to remember a random Anki slide. Like, that is how I remember it. And so, like, even in this, I became an expert on tuberculosis in 4 hours because I was locked into Henry's story.
Yeah. I feel like stories are super important. I think your observation is right on. I mean, I think if we could find a way to get more story into medical education, I think that would be a big net positive for med students.
I think that was a really, I don't know if it's the right word for it, but like a really lovely part of our abnormal pregnancy lecture, where the OB giving the lecture went through a couple cases, and that was the lecture was like, here's this patient I had, here's their presentation and everything. Yeah, we'll talk about how it could have presented differently, but here's how that was managed. And that was the whole lecture, those 3 or 4 cases of the abnormal events that he wanted us to learn about.
Yeah, but presenting it as a story, like that is what's gonna, and that's how our profession is going to be. Like, we're not dealing in, like, we are dealing in the physiology, but first and foremost, we're dealing with the patient.
Yeah, it starts with an interaction with a patient who tells you a story.
Yeah.
And I think it would be really cool if there was time in each lecture to like start with a story that sort of puts what we're about to talk about into context. And then maybe at the end, bring it back to that story and say, this is what we've learned and how it relates to that story. I think that would be kind of an amazing way to. But what do I know? I'm just a podcaster.
Yeah, what do you know? You didn't even know when the book came out.
Shut up.
I'm never going to let that go.
Nope.
Excellent.
One thing that really struck me kind of early in the book, maybe not early, it was like a third of the way through. He talks about it being the flattering malady and how kind of beauty standards and illness with consumption, as it was kind of termed then, or there's some other names for it and everything. In addition to like it being a disease of poets
Mhm.
and people who were weak in body and strong in mind. What else did you all kind of think about how that impacted beauty standards and stuff?
Yeah, when Zach and I were talking about doing this book for the podcast, I was like, I want to talk about this chapter because this chapter was one of my favorite chapters. Anything relating to body image and just how we perceive women in general is something I am interested in, and the fact that he included this was incredible. And just like the idea that has persisted over time of our beauty standards and how he brought up like, like I've termed it consumption core, like looking like a Tim Burton character, like the paleness, the skinniness, and how that's pervaded through our culture and over time and across barriers too, right? Like my family's from India, and still the ideal is to be pale, to be skinny, things like that. And that was something that really stood out to me, and I really appreciated him bringing it up.
Yeah, within like Western literature, right? If you look back at Eliza Poe, who died in her early 20s in like 1811, either definitely or probably of tuberculosis. Her son, Edgar Allan Poe, if you've heard of him instead, continued to write and include women in his writings that had alabaster skin, they were wispy, large-eyed, and had like rosy or feverish cheeks. And then, by the 1850s, like people were using what was it, belladonna for their eyes, like
to get that wide-eyed look. Yeah.
Well, and even like the concept of blush today, like on your cheeks, was also like trod back to tuberculosis.
Yeah. I have crazy blush blindness. When I put blush on, I'm putting it all over. I want to look like I'm in the throes of consumption.
Yeah, inflammation's hot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Smoking hot.
Hypothalamus go burr.
No, but yeah, I found it really interesting, and like how things have changed over time. Like, before being larger, having more to your body was a sign of like wealth, a sign of status, and then that changes over time because of a disease, which I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shoot, if we go like 30,000 years ago, which is when they're dated the Venus of Willendorf.
So that's the statue that, I don't know, I've seen this before. Yeah. It's like the statue of this sort of like chunky person, someone with some mass.
Yeah, bigger abdomen, like large. You could describe them like pendulous breasts and everything. And people had this idea that it's a fertility totem. That's definitely what it is, and not if you look at the way the head of the figurine is, that it's like a forced perspective self-portrait of someone looking down at their own body, maybe, is the other idea. And so it's not even like a secondary viewer. It's someone's like self-perception of their maybe pregnant, maybe not pregnant body. But if you look down yourself, like it's a different perspective that changes those proportions.
What's this thing in the book about Gen Expert cartridges and pricing?
So those are crazy. I just read this chapter like yesterday. But they are the testing that are used to identify tuberculosis and then multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And they are manufactured by this company. I want to say it's Danaher. It might be a Danaher subsidiary or whatever, but it's some drug company who was price gouging these cartridges or whatever, and like bragging about it on Twitter.
Yeah, it's like when you buy the paper towel dispenser, but then the actual paper towels that are the only ones that fit in them are way more expensive, or you buy any sort of printer.
I was going to say the printer ink analogy is the one that I'm more familiar with.
Yeah.
So they were price gouging these like low and middle income countries where tuberculosis still persists and is endemic today. For these like 10, I think the like regular one was 10 to identify that you had tuberculosis, and then the other one was like 15. So like to completely screen someone to identify the tuberculosis and the medications that they would need is like upwards of $30, which like doesn't sound like a lot to us, but when you are living in Sierra Leone, that's like half of your monthly paycheck.
Yeah.
Goes to just identifying this disease, and then you have to deal with the medications and then the social stigma and everything else that comes along with it.
Yeah, it's not feasible for a lot of these nations when he puts some numbers in the book of some countries having like a $50 per citizen a year like expenditure that the government is able to put towards or does put towards healthcare costs. So like they're not able to foot that bill either, or even like offset it for these patients realistically when you're including everything else that a government's like health infrastructure needs to be trying to do. So
Yeah, and then there's just like I remember one of the most frustrating parts of reading this book, and it was meant to be frustrating, is like the solution is right there, but it's not profitable.
Yeah.
Or it's not profitable at your first glance. Even if you like crunch the numbers out of like overall net productivity, it actually is profitable. But like at that first glance, it doesn't seem like it's going to make money. So then people are not willing to put money into it.
I feel like that equation relies on people understanding that
the future exists.
the future exists. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right. It's not like just in the moment. Like,
But that's why I've always thought that, medicine and profit, they really are not great together.
No.
I mean, this is how we do it in this country, right?
yeah. And the problem is this is how they do it in a lot of
countries. Yeah.
Right? Like there were so many barriers to getting the medication or creating widespread policy in these countries to help reduce rates of tuberculosis simply because the numbers weren't looking as pretty as we would want them to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these like thermocycling units, they do this PCR reaction, and y'all learn about all that later or whatever. But it works similar to the COVID ones that we eventually got up and running. And I saw during my time in Maryland agencies that were doing weekly testing. So they would split people into like 5 or 10 groups, and you'd report if you were in the building, and you'd get a swab. And they did that testing like every single week, going through thousands and thousands like a day to continually test people for it, just running through all these supplies and everything. Why? Because it really, really mattered. They decided that those people know if they got it at the earliest opportunity to break any like cycles of infection.
Yeah, so interesting to compare what we did with COVID versus
and not even
what we're
everywhere
doing
with
with
COVID,
tuberculosis.
but certain places were really stringent about things.
I think that just the fact that we were able to spin up a vaccine at all in the time that we were able to do it is a testimony to what we can do when we're sufficiently
when we give a shit
about it.
Yeah.
Well, and that was also that was built off of years of research too. Just like
we had the information, we had what we needed.
Yeah. We just didn't know where to apply it until everyone unlocked their pocketbooks to be able to let people go ahead and try it.
Right.
And that's sort of
people care enough.
Yeah, and that's
because
sort of
rich
thing
people were
happened.
getting sick.
Yeah, happened with identification and like care for TB and stuff too over like much longer time period. But there was this like back and forth between German and French scientists of them figuring out one thing and then them figuring out a way to actually do something with it, and then the other ones being mad that someone else figured out how to do something with it, and then they go and they figure out another thing. And so if it's a constant race where everyone can realize that we can learn something new and get something more out of it instead of trying to like rely on forced obsolescence or like slowly providing new innovations, then we can get more done.
Well, and this is one of the reasons why I feel so uncomfortable lately about grants and things like that getting canceled, because that assumes like to say like we're going to save money by canceling these grants assumes again that there is no future utility in studying these things. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of times we learn things that we don't know what we can do with right now, but which later we go, oh shit, we studied that a while back.
Yeah.
We can do something with that. That's important,
Velcro and toddler shoes.
Yeah.
I remember like
Maybe we better explain that.
Yeah, Velcro was what like originally like like hook and loop closures was originally like a space age sort of invention for a fastener that can be used in space, and now it's Velcro's on everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're surrounded
Including
by
your toddlers.
Velcro right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of the wires that are running this thing are have Velcro all over them. So, well, then there's this like human choices as a cause of disease concept, which we've been talking about, kind of. But I think it's worth it sounds to me like worth talking about even further because, you know, we kind of equate disease with like, you know, germs and, you know, a virus or a bacteria or whatever. But in the case of tuberculosis, it's more than that.
Yeah. So here's a quote from his chapter 9. People who are treated as less than fully human by the social order are more susceptible to tuberculosis. It's not because of their moral codes or choices or genetics. It's because they're treated as less than fully human by the social order.
yeah.
So it's these social determinants of health that people talk about or say like are a contributing factor to something, but in lots of ways they're more of the causative agent than the thing that you can turn around and actually cure with a medicine, because those things stay endemic with those aspects of like our society remaining in place.
Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like that's what we've been like touching on when we talk about the social determinants of health, like in our lectures and stuff. It's that one graph that I can never remember the proportions of, but like 20% of health determining factors are what we do in a hospital and like your day-to-day behaviors, and like the other 50% is like your education and your access and like your socioeconomic status. And so it's like those things are the real root of the problem, but we just don't invest in those in this country.
Yeah, I think we were talking about like just the U.S. healthcare system compared to others of like, if we were to spend just $1 on like social services, we would save, and compared to other developed countries, like we are just like woefully behind in that regard. Yeah. Like you see other countries that like put the effort into spending money on social services, which like increases people's quality of life just because of like that's the function of what these things do. But then it also saves you a lot of money on healthcare, just in the long run. Yeah. So
because you can give people all the TB drugs you want if they don't have food to fill their belly.
Right, it's not going to help. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then also I think there was another thing with TB specifically with the idea of stigma that comes with it, right? Like if you already have socioeconomic barriers and then there's an added layer of cultural stigma, you're not going to go get the help you need. First of all, you may not even be able to access the help you need, but even if you can, you're not going to go and get it. And then you're not going to have that social support around you that is incredibly valuable when it comes to overcoming a disease. So all of those are going to make your life harder when you're fighting a disease.
And like one thing I really wanted to touch on was the kind of not like breaking down the dichotomy that John does between romanticization and stigma, because like you have this disease that at the same time was this like glorious consumptive disease of poets that like they would go to the lakes or whatever and then they would put out the best work of their generation and then pass away from tuberculosis. Yeah. But then you also have these people that are low socioeconomic status and are heavily stigmatized and like can't tell anyone that they have tuberculosis. And like you think that
because if they do, their livelihood will be threatened.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Such as it is.
Mm-hmm. And so it's like you have these things, and at first glance they look like opposites, but they're both just ways to other people and to remove them from the social order in one way or another. And I thought that was like a really powerful thought, and that like doesn't show up at first glance. Like you really have to like chew on that for a little bit.
Kind of a combination of both flattering and stigmatizing language at times,
right?
To putting like beautiful frailty as a descriptor, like
putting someone on a pedestal is still putting them in a different place from you. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me about Henry more.
Henry stressed me out. I was stressed reading this book, guys.
Henry has a YouTube channel.
Henry, I
does.
did. I looked it up. It's incredible. Definitely look that up if you get the chance and if you've read the book. But yeah, I just, again, like we talked about, like when you put a human to the face, like when you give me a story, I'm just a little kid needing a bedtime story. Like you give me a story, I'm going to latch onto it. And Henry's was just so cinematic. Like
he shows up on like the second page, in the first chapter, and then is all the way into the postscript. His story continues.
Yeah. And like it was a very good way of tying everything together, right? Like even we had like these examples of like Henry is a really good poet and a really good writer. And like he's shining through his tuberculosis, but he's also suffering from this disease that is racking his body and racking his mental load and everything about him.
Lost connection to his peers from school and everything when he had to be hospitalized, family distancing, and all those things are stuff that he's gone through.
Yeah, I can imagine in his circumstances being sick means he has to be sort of isolated. And that, I mean, I think we know now with COVID and all the isolation that had to take place that was, not a great thing that people had to go through, especially kids like, who of Henry's age.
Yeah, there's a story. He talks about it early on in the book of a young child that was hospitalized, and she had a friend, and I think it was a little girl. Had a friend whose father would come, and because this friend's sister was also sick, like couldn't come and visit her as well, and the father would bring her letters and everything. The sister who was not hospitalized had actually passed away, and the father was continuing to write letters to keep up his hospitalized child's spirits, who also then passed away. These are like 5-6-year-old kids in a kind of abusive environment too, within the hospital, not being allowed to cry or move about because of the best wisdom of the time being that you needed to just lay as still as possible with your tuberculosis and try to heal that way.
That's a historical story, basically.
Yes. It's about sanatoriums that popped up in the early 1900s with this idea that, like, if you just do nothing when you have tuberculosis, if you don't let
fresh air,
anything
get some fresh air.
What is it? Adirondack chairs? How do you say that?
Adirondack.
Yeah, whatever.
Adirondack.
Whatever. Adirondack chairs were designed for people to be able to like lays about and construct them fairly easily with it. Yeah.
What were you saying?
I also feel like that story it brought up a really good point of like this idea of like controlling patients in medicine. Like the story about the little girl in the sanatorium, it seems like really extreme when you hear it for the first time, right? Like you have these nurses that are telling this patient that like she has to lay in bed, she can't go play with her friend, she can't talk, she can't do anything unless they tell her that she can do it at a specific time, because otherwise her tuberculosis is going to get worse.
Yeah, if they like misbehave, they put a cubicle around their bed too.
Yeah,
and isolate them.
Yeah, right.
But I think it brings up a really good point of like when we have patients in the hospital here, like the intent may not be malicious, but like when you are putting IVs and other things that are limiting a patient to only be in a bed, and they can only have visitors at certain times when the hospital says that they can have them, like there is like a certain amount of control that's exerted over these patients. They feel like they have less control over their own life. So it's just something I think to like be mindful of like we feel like, oh, that's just an extreme. That's something that happened in the past. But I think that it's definitely something that still persists within our medical system today.
Seems like a lot of things that are done in hospitals, especially, are for the convenience of the providers.
It is. And also, like, even if it is for the patient, there is definitely always going to be, like, there is a gap between the provider's understanding and the patient's understanding.
Yeah.
Which is why stuff like this, like learning how to tell scientific material in a way that is understandable to your common, like your just everyday person, is an incredibly valuable skill and incredibly important in medicine, because you want your patient to understand that the things you're doing are for them, assuming that they are, right? Like you want,
and also just why you're doing them.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, like you know, if you're gonna, it would be. I mean, to take it to an extreme, you know, like if you walked up to a patient and jabbed their arm with a needle without like talking to them about it first, that would kind of suck.
That would suck.
That would be a dick move.
Yeah, it would
on your part.
It would.
And so, you know, they teach you things like, okay, we're going to signpost, you know, how to, you know, when you're doing a physical exam, because you don't want to freak people out. You don't want them to be, you want them to at least be less upset with what you're about to do.
Yeah.
I should have used I should have used the analogy of, you know, turn your head and cough. You know, if you just walked up to somebody who was like, turn your head, turn your head and cough, they'd be like, what are you even doing?
Yeah. I also think like
I like
that's
that one better.
Another point of like the research part that we talked about, right? Like, yeah, that was long ago because they didn't know any better, which is why we need further research. It's only with that further research are we ever going to learn that the things we're doing, if they're effective or not.
And we're lucky in a way that it's a relatively slow growing one. Like if you talk about antibacterial antibiotic resistance for bacteria, that's a tough race to win. Same with viruses, like the mutation rate and their ability to evade stuff. But because tuberculosis, the bacterium, is pretty slow growing, like we could maybe hopefully stay ahead of it if you just keep looking for new weird compounds, keep leaving out your bread while you go on a trip and discover the new penicillin or whatever, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah,
that's why you do it.
That's why there's fungus in
my
bread.
home.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why you still have a job here.
Yeah. I bring in my fungus.
Yeah.
I'm like, here,
every month.
Here, Dean Cooper.
You go to the deans and you're like, here's a platter.
This will help you.
It's like a forbidden charcuterie board.
Check out these hyphae. Something that I also wanted to talk about is, so this book is a big expose, long, you know, almost extra long chapter, if you took the whole book, of another one of John Green's book, The Anthropocene Reviewed. And this, if it was a chapter there, would be one that's all about equity. So have any of you all played Mario Kart before?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
What?
No.
What?
What do you
Mario
mean?
Kart? What?
No, I never got into video games except for Quake.
So I'm pretty...
That was
Okay.
mid-90s,
Yeah.
so it's been
Yeah.
a while.
Doom?
Little Doom,
Yeah.
but more Quake.
Yeah. Okay. Well, during orientation week, you have to come to whenever they do the Switch play, and then you can play some Mario Kart.
Is that a plan for orientation?
That is
week?
something that
I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
think they did that. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a couple.
How have you
times.
gone
I don't know.
all your life?
I don't know what to tell you.
You know what? Maybe we do a let's play for the podcast.
We really should.
that next week.
That would be amazing.
That would be incredible.
I have to fight Jude to borrow his Switch.
You
for-
just bring Jude.
Yeah. There you go. Then you get some real hot takes. So within Mario Kart, it's a racing game, right? And how do you win a racing game?
Coming
first.
first.
You come.
Yeah,
you be fast.
Coming first. You drive the straightest line possible. You corner well and everything. And if you start in front, then you probably win, right? Like I don't know. I don't know.
Your chances are
Unless
better.
you're really
your chances
bad.
are a lot
Yeah,
better.
your chances
Unless
are
you're really
higher.
bad.
Yeah.
But you're not going to start at the front if you're really bad, or if you didn't have the opportunities inherent for you. So if you play like multiple races, if you come in first, then you start first in the next race and everything. But the equalizer, and the way that makes it actually fun for me to play with my 8-year-old and my 5-year-old, considering I have years more experience. Like I played Mario Kart on the original DS, and some of the same maps are the same. The first time we played it, I was like, I know what's coming next, and I haven't played this in over a decade. But the thing that equalizes it is these like power ups, right? And if you are in the front, you're going to get like really weak power ups. You're going to get like these little coins.
Yeah, you're not going to get much.
Yeah, or like a banana that maybe you'll be lucky, but it's really obvious and easy to avoid. Unless you're the 5-year-old, and sometimes you still hit them. But the 5-year-old sitting back there in 12th place is going to get a different power up. They're going to get something that
they're going to get a rocket.
Yeah, they're going to get the bullet bill, or they're going to get the star that gives them invulnerability and
or
makes
they're
them drive
tossing
faster.
those bananas.
What?
They're tossing the bananas.
Yeah. And then that can bring you all the way back up like into the race. If you are in the middle of the pack, a little bit ways back, you're going to get certain items that just knock out the person in the front and stops them, slows them down. So it's a game that everyone with different abilities can play and all have a better chance of winning. Or
That's
at least
really clever.
Maybe if you'd played the game, you would have known that.
That's really clever. Well, I've seen people play the game. Like, I'm familiar with the concept of Mario Kart. You know, like I don't.
But like, if you're in the front, you're not getting the power ups.
But like, I didn't realize that was how that specific mechanism was how they equalized gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Good job, Nintendo.
Yeah. So
Mario's putting in the work.
The times that we play, like, it took a while for Jude to ever like beat me while playing, and then the first time it was like he got lucky at the end, right, and got something that got him past me or across the finish line just a little bit early, like a bad combo for me getting hit with something and then him getting the power up. But that encouraged him to continue to want to play with me without having to like sandbag yourself necessarily.
Yeah.
So it'll keep people engaged with
so you can be on full competitive mode with your kid.
Yeah.
But
there was
also
no other way.
Yeah.
But also without, I mean, obviously without hope, there's no fun in the game. There's no point in playing the game as the person who is going to start off in 12th place.
Yeah. And people learn early if you are patronizing them or letting them win or something. And then that's not fun either after the first time or two that you realize that's why you won that time. That's why you got to do something. That's why
I let you win.
Yeah, I let you win. I let you get your beta-quilline and treat your extremely drug-resistant TB, not because of your own worth, but because I let you.
Yeah. But if we do it the right way, if you give people the power-ups that allow them to participate more fully in the game of life, then those people can, not to put too fine a point on it, be, just a more productive part of the society that we live in, if that's what we value, being productive. Otherwise, why even play that game? It's, I mean, yeah, that's a really interesting analogy.
It's something like I'm in the global health class here at CCOM, and something we talk about a lot is the idea of like if you want to do global health work in your future career, like the idea is not to just like go in and fix everything, right? Like the greater idea is that the work that you're doing like is going to help enable the systems within those countries that you're visiting to like do the work themselves, right? So like, can you go and can you like teach, students or residents or doctors to do a procedure by themselves, take an ultrasound so that they're able to have that capability and continue that work even when you leave, which is just something that like, yeah, it seems intuitive, but like, I feel like a lot of people don't like really think about that of like, it's not about
it's
doing it. And it's about enabling.
It's easier to go
people
in and fix a problem than it is to.
And it gives you that little like it gives you that little God complex, but that's not the goal of it, right? Like the goal isn't to come in and solve everything and be their savior. And if that is your goal, you're going about it wrong. Yeah. Like you're not doing the right thing.
Like if you want to, if someone like needs to fish, to feed
Right.
themselves.
Like,
Right,
yeah.
right. Do you teach them to fish, or do you just give
them the
them
fish,
give them
yeah.
one, or worse, do you tell them to go get their own fishing pole, but they can't get to the sports store because it is in a different country,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
costs what, $7,000 for the
Right.
fishing pole, and then every time you cast the line, it costs you like $25.
Yeah. Right. And like even like in this case, they talked about like the layout of Sierra Leone and how like the railway was built to
Extract.
to take things out of the country, not to help the country. So like you need to shift your focus from when it comes to helping it's to lift them up and to make it so they can do the lifting themselves. That's a better way of putting it. Yeah.
Something we've talked about. This reminded me of something we've talked about on the show before. The idea of path dependence. I want to give Jeff Goddard credit for introducing me to that idea. But basically, it's the idea that the path we've taken before influences what we do now. So the classic example, and this is real, the width of trains, the physical width of trains that we have today is due to the Roman carts
Yeah.
that were in use in the olden days, and so that it's basically the idea that the path has created this situation that we're in now. And I guess what I'm thinking about is, in this case, the extraction of wealth was once the primary motivator of, and probably still is, the primary motivator of colonialism. And so it remains an important part of what we do today, not because it should be that way, but that's just how we've always done it, I think. And if we could sort of step off the path and say, there's a better arrangement here, even if you just want to look at it in purely economic terms, there's a better arrangement for how to do this, to how to be a part of the world. It's worth considering.
I love John Green.
Love him so much.
I love him so much.
He got me drinking Diet Dr. Pepper again
Because of the Anthropocene
Yes.
review. Yeah.
Yeah. I was commuting a lot then,
Yeah.
and I needed to mix up the Diet Mountain Dew on the commute. So
My friends and I in 8th grade, this is completely unrelated to the book. It's just me saying I love John Green. There was promotion happening for the Fault in Our Stars movie, and we went to the BAM, that's in Ames, Iowa, and we were all of 3 people who went to this promotional event, which involved egging a car. And as we were sitting there, BAM had a Starbucks, and my friends were like, oh my God, we're such quirky 13-year-olds. We should write a story. Like, we should, all of us decided to do a little writing competition amongst the 3 of ourselves. And literally the only prompt was to write a story titled The Fault in Our Starbucks. And all 3 of us came back a week later with 3 vastly different stories, all in varying lengths. One was just like fan fiction of The Fault in Our Stars. One was about a heist. One was about something else altogether. And I love you, John Green.
can you find yours and include it in the show notes?
Absolutely not.
Can we
which one
find
was
yours? What was your
Unwillingly.
What was
You
your
can't find it. It's not published anywhere.
What was your story?
Here's the fanfic.
Come on, bring it on.
Mine is based on, I based it off of I think it's a Pakistani movie, but it's about 4 baristas who have convinced themselves that one of their regulars is a terrorist and are going about trying to trap him through various horrible hijinks.
Can we
No.
do a
No.
reenactment, a dramatic reading
No.
of your...
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
I think the fact that I've said this much is a gift to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It feels that way.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Really
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
You're very brave.
Yeah. I'm very vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, that's our show, I think. Unless you guys have anything else you want to
I
bring
gave
up.
I bared my soul for John Green. Y'all can do the
Yeah,
same.
Tyler, bare your soul for John Green. Maybe he'll come on the show someday.
Yeah.
I don't know. He was just in Iowa City. Like, why? We could have
Over
grabbed
Zoom.
him then. Yeah.
I
Did you go?
think that's illegal, but
Well,
yeah.
Again, that would require knowing when the book came out.
And
You
there
are
it is.
So rude.
really just setting you up to
Yeah,
do that
yeah,
bit
yeah,
again.
Wait, when was the... Okay. Why did I think
Is there a
this?
publication date
Yes.
inside of this?
I literally read the publication date and was like, oh, it's tomorrow.
Oh, it just says 2025. Never mind. Damn.
Wait, just fuck it.
Was it a Kindle edition or something?
I don't know.
The paperback, maybe?
Maybe it's like a graphic
I
novel.
love the cover. Did you all actually like?
I
look
love
and
it.
realize what's on the cover? It's,
Mine, I took the sleeve off.
Yeah,
Well,
mine's-
yeah.
mine's
I mean,
okay.
that's for when it's on the shelf
Yeah.
or whatever. But it's like a view onto the like microscopic smear kind of, which has great I forget sensitivity versus specificity. It is great. 50%, you know, you either do or you don't.
Yeah.
I could have told you walking in there, like, you do or you don't, 50-50. So,
Oh, like for having
yeah,
it?
whether or not you have it.
Yeah,
Because
for
it
like a
misses
sputum
50%.
culture?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you guys see the end pages? So, like, the end page at the beginning of the book is the tuberculosis tubercles.
Ooh.
A caseating granuloma, as we would say.
Yeah.
And then
No.
in the back is the medications. And so,
hold that up.
That's
Hold
wild.
those up. To
Which-
that
which-
camera right there?
yeah, which camera am I going to?
that camera right there?
So, yeah, I feel like you have longer arms than I do. There we go. So those are the tubercles, and then on the other side is
Okay, I'll just switch the camera. And make
the medications, and he said that was, like we said earlier, that the disease is separated from the medication by the book.
Right. The medication is where the disease is not.
Yeah.
And the disease is where the medication is not.
Yeah, exactly.
Or treatment or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've confirmed that when I looked at the publication date, I thought it was April 18th, but it is in fact March 18th.
Yeah.
Tough.
So I was like, oh, well, I can't look at it anyway. Sorry, John Green. I'll tell you what. I will buy the book to make it up to you.
Make sure you get a
Wow.
signed copy.
Like me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sweet. Well, yeah, that's our show. Zach, thanks for
Doing everything.
putting together doing everything, all of the things that I didn't do.
You asked me if I had it done on Tuesday, and I was like, yeah, I'll send it to you tonight. And then I did it Tuesday and sent it to you.
Yeah.
So
The shit.
Impressive that it was done by Tuesday.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
sometimes there are thoughts and just not action going on
Yeah.
up here. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Tyler, Srishti,
Yeah.
thanks for hanging out with us today.
Of course. Yeah.
Pleasure to be
Anytime.
here.
And what kind of dope would I be if I didn't? Well, what kind of dope am I? Shortcoats. But what kind of dope would I be if I didn't thank you, Shortcoats, for making us a part of your week? If you're new here and you like what you heard today, follow the show wherever fine podcasts are available. The show is made possible by a generous donation by Carver College Medicine Student Government and ongoing support from the Writing and Humanities program. Our music is by Dr. Vox and Catmosphere. I'm Dave Etler saying, don't let the bastards get you down. Talk to you in 1 week. Hi, Shortcoats. Look, life in medical education, life in America, life in the world is often difficult. And I often wish I could help. All I have is this podcast, but in my wildest dreams, you have the support you need to lead a life of your choosing. You deserve to be happy, healthy, and successful in whatever ways you define those words. So if you need support because you've experienced racism, discrimination, harassment, mental health crises, I want you to be able to get the help that you need. And so I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some resources that you can use. But the bottom line is that for what it's worth, I see you. I know you're out there. I wish I could do more. Maybe I can in ways that I don't understand yet or know about. But I see you, and I'm glad you're here, and other people are too. This Shortcode podcast is a proud member of the MedEd Media Network. Inspiration, information, and guidance on your journey to medical school and beyond at mededmedia.com.